Can you hear me now?
Good.
It's good to have everyone here for our class time this morning. If you would, remember Jerry in your prayers. He's not able to be with us again today. He's not been doing well these past few days, and Betty said she thinks he's ran himself down while he was trying to help Junior and be down there for him, and that Jerry might himself end up making a little trip to the hospital ER sooner rather than later. So remember Jerry, and pray that he will feel better, and if need be, go get fluids or whatever's ailing him. It's good to have visitors with us. We're glad for everyone here for our class time. So what was the topic last week? Let's see how good your memory is or how attentive you are. You better be working on your memory. Jerry just told me that there's a Georgia law that when we hit 70, we're going to have to start proving our driving ability, which will include our cognitive ability. So that may be a challenge. Some of us may be taking Ubers and such here before too long. So, well, what was our topic last week? Anybody remember? I'll give you a hint. It went with the day. What was last Sunday? Father's Day. And what we talked about was?
Fathers should do.
What fathers should do. Very good. Good types of good fathers, right? So even though it's past Father's Day, we need to follow up with some examples of fathers in the Old Testament that we don't need. So we talked about fathers and how important they were, and how in our society a lot of families either don't have a father, or if they do have a father, they don't have a good father, don't have a one that assists and helps and does those things that a father should do. So I thought we would need to finish up class today talking about the type of fathers not needed. Those not needed. Any fathers in particular come to your mind from the Old Testament of bad examples? I've got them here, so I've got an advantage. I've got a list of them here. Anybody come to mind? Y'all need to get ready for that 70 test, I tell you.
Elijah, Elisha.
Who else? Anybody? You can go ahead and be turning to Genesis while you're racking your brain. We're going to go Genesis 13 first. So types of fathers that we don't need, and in particular, the things that these fathers did that we don't need. These fathers may have made mistakes and may have corrected those in their lives, and we certainly have the opportunity to do that, but the types of fathers and the things they did that we don't need to emulate and do ourselves. Someone read Genesis 13, verses 10 through 13, if you would. Genesis 13, 10 through 13.
And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley, moved his tent far from Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look for the place where you are, northward and southward, eastward and westward.
Okay, so what was Lot's rationalization? What was his mindset? When he was going to choose where he would go, what was his mindset? What does verse 10 say? He lifted his eyes. What does that mean? He looked. What'd he see?
Wonderful, bountiful land.
This is good. This is good land. What didn't he see? Or what did he choose to ignore? He probably saw it. Surely he saw it.
The temptations that came with all that.
Yeah. What did verse 13 say? The men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. So Lot lifted up his eyes and he saw something good. And that was good. Obviously the land was good. And he chose that, and Abraham and his family and his crew went the other way. So Lot made a choice based on his materialism. You know, here's this lush stuff. My animals are going to do well. I will thrive. I will prosper. So what he saw was something good. What he didn't see was something bad.
You know, even though Lot did this, he is listed in Hebrews in the heroes of faith.
Yep. So that's what I was saying earlier. Sometimes we see examples of fathers who made bad decisions who still ended up being good men. And that's an encouragement to us, because that tells us we do not have to be perfect. We cannot be perfect. And these men made mistakes, but mostly they would return to God. But was this decision a good one? Was this on the top of Lot's good dad decisions, good father decisions? No. Was this a good place for to raise his family? No way. So how about 2 Peter 2? Somebody read verses 7 and 8. Actually, let's read 6, 7, and 8, if you will. 2 Peter 2, 6, 7, and 8.
If by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly. And if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked.
So Lot he paid for his decision. Here the Bible tells us he suffered because of those that were there, oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. Those around there, they affected the family. They affected them while they lived there, and their sin, of course, forced them to have to leave, didn't it? So we see Lot here, he was tormented and oppressed by those around him. So in looking at the things that he thought was important to him, the materialism and the great land, he and his family paid a price. He was oppressed.
You know, verse 6 is kind of a foreshadowing of the judgment day, the last day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, God destroyed the cities utterly, and Lot paid the price while he was living there. What about his family? Let's go back to Genesis 19. We won't read the whole chapter, but I'm gonna choose a few verses here and read them to try to make a point. So Lot paid a price while he was there from his decision. And here in Genesis 19, starting, hang on. So after the scene up to through about verse 11 with the visitors and the men of the city wanting to come in and get them so that they could have sexual relations with them, then the men said to Lot, these angels, "Have you anyone else here, son-in-laws, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city? Take them out of this place. For we will destroy this place because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city." But listen, but to his sons-in-law he seemed to be joking. "Yeah, oh man, we got you." So they didn't believe him. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city." And while he lingered, Lot lingered. And some would say he lingered because he didn't really want to leave it. He had grown fond of this sinful place. But I think partly why he lingered, he didn't have his whole family on board. We just saw that his sons-in-law thought he was joking and didn't believe what he was saying. So I think partly he lingered because he didn't have everybody ready to roll yet. So go ahead, Mark, and I'll pick back up here.
Well, it's another example of how true obedience and belief is necessary to keep one from being
Yeah.
condemned.
Yeah, he should have, Lot should have believed them, the urgency the angels were telling him, and his sons-in-law should have believed him as well. But while he lingered, the men literally took hold of his hand, his wife, and his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So we have indication here that some of Lot's family didn't make it, right? We see who the angels took the hands of, he and his wife and his daughters. So there's an indication that some of his family chose to remain behind and didn't leave with him. So while that was their own decision, sons-in-law or other sons, we know he had sons because it was mentioned, the angels mentioned sons, son-in-laws, daughters. So if some of Lot's family lingered and were destroyed with the destruction, who does some of that responsibility fall on? Lot. He brought them there, didn't he? That was their decision. They were obviously grown, their son-in-laws. They were certainly old enough to be married, and they made their own decision. But Lot parking them there close to this place that tormented him that we just read, it was not a good place. So this, here in Genesis 19, it indicates that some remained behind. And possibly that's why Lot's wife looked back, went back, headed back, whatever the term looked back means. Some think it means she literally turned and looked, but looking back can also mean longing and looking back. We don't know, but a lot of that falls on Lot.
We do know that he lost the married daughters because verse 8 says his 2 virgin daughters were the 2 that went with him.
Yep, the 2 that were at home. So he lost family. So we don't need fathers to behave like Lot, and he made life decisions that affected them all. And at least in his example here, it was materialism. He was looking at what the place had to offer. So let's go on to another father's example. Let's go to 1 Samuel 2, and we're not going to read all of 1 Samuel 2, so I'll read this and just kind of pick and choose the verses that we need. So 1 Samuel 2, we're talking about Eli. 1 Samuel 2, and starting verse 12. So 1 Samuel 2, verse 12. Now, this starts out really to the point. Now, the sons of Eli were corrupt. They did not know the Lord. Do y'all know anything about corruption? Do you read, see anything about corruption? We know what corruption can be a lot of things, but it's sin. It's doing wrong. So the sons of Eli were corrupt, and they did not know the Lord. So there's the first verse. They were corrupt, and they did not know the Lord.
They're hypocrites too, big time.
Verse 17. Therefore the sin of the young men, his sons, was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering to the Lord. So they were corrupt, they were sinful, and they were, to some extent affecting definitely the people, the men, the people there. And then maybe verse 22, I'll read 22 through 24. Now Eli was very old, and he heard everything his sons did to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So he said to them, why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all the people. No, my sons, for it is not a good report that I hear. You make your Lord's people transgress. If one man sins against another, God will judge him. But if a man sins against the Lord, who will intercede for him? Nevertheless, they did not heed the voice of their father, because the Lord desired to kill them. So here we've got obviously grown men, Eli's sons, and while they could make their own decision, Eli nevertheless didn't do everything he should have according to God's word. Scroll on over to verse 3, I'm sorry. Chapter 3, I'll get it. Chapter 3 and verse 13, just read this scripture as well. So here's what God says about Eli's sons. For I have told him that I will judge his house, Eli's house, forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain them. So he didn't do everything he could have and should have done, according to God, to help his wicked sons. He talked to them. We saw what he said to them. Maybe he talked to them and said, well, that's it. I'm done. That's enough. They can do what they're going to do. But he didn't restrain them. And we know that our age we're in right now is a very permissive age. And we see a lot of families where the father really doesn't set hard boundaries. They set these wishy-washy boundaries, like you really should do this now and don't do that. That's not going to be good. But they really don't draw lines in the sand and stick with them. And sometimes fathers will, over time, even fade in their lines they've drawn. Well, it's not that bad. And the point being, that fathers need to say no. Fathers need to put their foot down, and they need to have boundaries set. And here we see that, according to God, Eli didn't do everything that he should have done to restrain them and help them. And we know that fathers today are very, very lenient in that regard, and that's wrong. Be turning over to Proverbs. We're going to read a couple of verses in Proverbs 29. So turn over there.
Brother, real quick, James says that if you know to do something and you don't do it, it is a sin.
Yeah, definitely. And he didn't do everything he could have. He did speak to them. We saw that. But he didn't restrain them, according to God. And Proverbs 29, a couple of verses, reminds us that fathers need to do that. The rod and this is Proverbs 29, verse 15, and I'm going to read 17. The rod and rebuke give wisdom. So rebuking your child, taking the rod to them. Have any of you ever taken a rod to your child? A real rod?
I wanted to.
I hear you.
Like a fishing rod?
And they're not in here right now, and I understand it, huh? A fishing, what'd somebody say, a fishing
Is
rod?
it like a fishing rod?
Man, now that would hurt. Those things are flexible.
Your mercury hurts when you do it.
I carried a ping pong paddle all the time.
The rod didn't literally mean piece of iron. Take them out with it, not a rod. But the rod gives wisdom. Did you get wise when you got the hickory, the paddle, the fishing rod? I saw a dad the other day, it's just a funny little thing that said, we're not supposed to discipline our children. My dad, let little grandchild do it. What's wrong with you? It's okay. And then also my dad back in the days there with a whip, the belt, like a whip, just whipping that thing back and forth, practicing. So the rod gives wisdom. Did you get wise when you got the rod back in the day? Did that wisen you up? If it didn't, you got it again, didn't you?
There was a comedian talking about how his grandmother and mother would make him go cut his own switch.
Oh yeah, my mom did that.
Yeah, so just the sound of the switch in the air would make him cry.
That's funny. My mom took it a different level, though. If we came back with an unacceptable hickory, the sibling got to go get it. So you had to figure it out. Will this one be okay? Yeah, I don't think it'll kill me, and I think she'll accept it. I think it'll be all right. But yeah, go get your own. Did you get wise when you got the rod? It should wisen us up. Like, I'm not going to do that again. And then you get the rod for something else. So rod gives wisdom. Rebuke. What does rebuke mean? What does it mean to rebuke? Because rebuking gives wisdom as well, Proverbs says. Correct. And what type of correction do we think about if you think about rebuking?
Verbal.
Huh?
Verbal.
Verbal? Do we think of it like little 2-year-old and we're like, now listen, honey, you're going to have to think about things and maybe do things a little bit better next time and not be so this or not be so... Is that rebuking?
No, it's teaching that child the word no.
Yeah. Rebuking is, we don't do that. No. Stop. Quit. And then if that don't work, we got the rod. What happens if we ignore or save the rod? We spoil the child. So we rebuking should be more than having parents, dads, we're talking about dads here, so moms as well, try to have intellectual discussions with children that are 2 or 3. Try to make them rationalize and reason. Is that possible?
No.
No, it's ridiculous. You can't sit down and have a rational or, there's just a point when they're young where you've got to rebuke them, and it's just literally, no, we don't do that. You're not going to do that. Now, when a child gets older, that rebuking can definitely be more. We can have more of a discussion with them and explain to them. Are you going to go through a 10-point dissertation to your 2-year-old about why they don't do this? No. I mean, you can be brief maybe, but rebuking means, no, we don't do that. That's not what we do. And these 2 verses here tell us we've got to do that. So verse 17, correct your son, and he will give you rest. Now, as a parent, do your children always give you rest? No, they wear you out. But correct your son, and he will give you rest. If he's doing the right thing, that'll give you some rest. Yes, and not even rest, but yes, he will give delight to your soul. So not only will you get rest, he's going to delight you by doing right. Because when we have kids that don't do the right thing, it doesn't give you rest and it doesn't give you delight. But that's on me. That's on me as a dad. And those are the kind of fathers we need, not like what Eli did here. Fathers must discipline their children. They must. Can they defer that? Should they defer that to the mom?
No.
Nope. Does that mean, the mom definitely should discipline as well, and if the mom's in the home more than the dad, she's going to discipline more. That's just common sense. Mom's around the kids a lot more than the dad, so she's going to do more, but that doesn't mean the father shouldn't discipline as well. And we talked about this, I think, last week, that the fear of the father's discipline, I mean, it's just true. Most of the time it trumps the fear of the mom. Even if the mom will beat you within an ounce of your life, we're still afraid of dad. If we should have a healthy fear of our father. But fathers must discipline and not do the thing that Eli did. So another father was what Achan did. We know about this story. Let's read a few verses in Joshua. Turn to Joshua, and if someone, when we get there, we'll read Joshua 6, verse 2, and we'll catch a few verses here. The Lord speaking to Joshua here. So starting out, we see Israel's crossed over the Jordan River, and they were headed toward Jericho. And God said this in Joshua 6, verse 2.
And the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor.
So, and we know the story that follows. The Lord said, before anything was even done, He said, I've given it to you. The outcome was already set. God had delivered Jericho. And we know they were to march around for 6 days. They had the trumpet. They did everything that God told them to do. And they conquered Jericho. But the Lord made it plain that there were some restrictions to this victory. Going down to verse 17, and let's read 17 through 19. So He delivered them Jericho, defeated Jericho. What did He tell them? Verses 17 through 19.
The city shall be accursed, even it, and all that are therein to the Lord. Only Rahab and the harlot shall live, she and all that are in her house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And ye in any wise keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest you make yourselves accursed when you take of the accursed thing and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So
God gave them victory over Jericho, but this apparently one restriction was given. God said, you're not to take of any of the stuff. It's a curse to you. It shall come into the treasury of the Lord. All the stuff, silver, gold, bronze, all the stuff, don't take it. So, of course, what did Achan do? He took it. Let's go over to 7, Joshua 7, and let's read verses 20, just 20 and 21. Joshua 7, 20 and 21.
Achan answered Joshua, truly I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful cloak from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, then I coveted them and took them, and see, they are hidden in the earth inside my tent, with the silver underneath.
So after they conquered Jericho, they traveled next to Ai, but they got beat. They got whipped. We didn't read that, but Ai defeated Israel. And Joshua asked God why. And in Joshua 7, verse 11, God told them, because there's sin in the camp. You lost to Ai because I wasn't with you, because there's sin in your camp. And that sin was Achan. And he took it, he longed for it, and he coveted it, longing for it, and he buried it. He hid it. And that was sin, because God had just directed them what not to do. Reminds me of Adam and Eve. It's like one thing. Leave this tree alone, y'all. This one. That's it. They had freedom, apparently, to do anything else, to tend the garden and to eat from anything else. They had one restriction. And Israel had one restriction. And we know that Joshua let the folks know that. They didn't go in ignorant. And in fact, Achan said he knew it was wrong, because what was his first words here in verse 20? I have sinned. And his sin was coveting, and his sin was following that covetousness up in action. He coveted them, and he took them. So he knew it was wrong, because he said, indeed, I have sinned against the Lord. So that's what he did. He was the guilty party here. And then scroll on down to verse 25. Let's read, I'll read this here, 25 and following. So he was the culprit. And Joshua said to Achan, why have you troubled us? The Lord will trouble you this day. So all Israel stoned him with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Then they raised up him a great heap of stones, still there to this day. So the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger, and therefore the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to his day. And let's go back up a verse, because This is important. Then Joshua, verse 24, with all Israel took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the garment, the wedge of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, all that he had, and they brought them to the valley of Acre. And then Joshua said, why have you troubled us? So they were all stoned to death. So did his family pay a very steep price for his sin?
Absolutely.
He could have made a good example by not doing that and doing what God had said. And there's no doubt it would have been tempting. If you just defeated a city, if we were in war with a neighboring town here and we destroyed it, Mark, and there was a brand new C8 Corvette sitting there with the key, the fob in it. They don't have keys anymore. With the fob in it. Would that be mildly tempting?
Probably.
Yeah. Could we even covet it and go, man? But the thought should end it. We should be, there it sits, I would love to have that. However, the Lord said, that's cursed, and I'm not to take that. It belongs to Him. It will be put in His house, in His treasury. So he had the option, after he saw how appealing it was and coveted it, he still didn't have to take it. And then after he took it, he didn't have to go bury it. It was just, it's one of those things, it's like, one thing leads to another when we choose to sin. And that's what he did, and his family was destroyed.
I think his family probably all knew about it, too.
That's a good point, Steve, because...
Hidden in his tent,
Yep.
probably they were all in on it, basically, that we're going to benefit from this.
That's a good point, and I tend to agree because they were all in it. A tent was a tent. Have you ever tried to hide? Have you ever been in a tent with somebody? Me and Sheila stayed in a yurt once, and those things are round. They're basically a big tent. Sheila actually wanted some for a while, put them up, but you can't hide anything in a tent, can you? So I agree. I think they probably knew.
Well, it's another example of how the Lord tests His creation, see if they will obey Him. And that's what this whole life is. And that's what's great about the Old Testament, so that we know His will and character and what He's like, that He says what He means what He says.
That's right. The examples that we can look at in the Old Testament should make us, take notice that while we serve a loving God, His love is abundant, and we see it in His willingness to have a plan for us. He could have just trashed us when we sinned at the Garden of Eden and said, well, that was a mistake. I should have known better than that, these people. No, He had a plan, and that plan was implemented, and it ended up with Jesus dying on the cross and us having hope. God loves us, but He's also a firm God, and He can't go against His nature. So when He says it, He means it, and if it's up to us whether we obey it or not. Let's get one more, Father. Go ahead and be turning to 1 Kings. We'll read just a couple of verses there in a moment. This one should be fairly brief. But first, go ahead and get in 1 Kings chapter 15, and we'll read a couple of verses. We also don't need fathers to do as Jeroboam did. The father he was to Nadab was not a great father, not a good example. Jeroboam was the first king of 19 kings of the northern kingdom. So he was the first king in this northern kingdom. And as being such, he had an opportunity to set a good example and to set the bar and to be righteous, set a good tone for his government and those that would follow. And who was going to follow? One of them was going to be his son Nadab. But instead, he chose to do his own thing and to walk after his own sin and his stubbornness accordingly. So here in verse 25, 1 Kings 15, 25 through 26, we read, Now Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel in the second year of Asa, king of Judah, and he reigned over Israel 2 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked, listen, in the way of his father. Well, what was the way of his father? And in his sin, by which he made Israel sin. So we see here Jeroboam was not a good example as a father, and Nadab basically did the same thing he did. He was evil in the sight of the Lord. He walked in the way of his father. As fathers, if we think our kids don't see what we do and how we behave, we're wrong. Even when they're little, they watch. So Jeroboam was not a good example to Nadab, and it in part caused Nadab to be evil in the sight of the Lord because he walked in the way of his father. He didn't have to. It's not all on Jeroboam. Nadab could have said, I'm not going to do this that my dad did. I'm not going to do that my dad did. We all love our dads. We should. But when you were growing up, was there ever a thing your dad did or said that you were kind of like, when I get older, I'm not going to do that? Maybe.
Then you changed your mind.
Huh? Yeah.
Then you changed your mind.
Yeah, because nobody's perfect. And growing up, if we see our father do something that's not right, we have that option. Nadab could have done that and said, I'm not going to be evil like my dad was as the first king. I'm going to straighten things out. But he didn't. But part of that falls on Jeroboam with how he behaved and how he raised his son Nadab. So Nadab did not have a righteous father to follow, to emulate, to imitate. He didn't. He had a sinful father who walked after his own desires, and Nadab did the same. So we don't have time. I only had 5. If you have time and you want to look at the last one, it would be regarding Ashdod. And this was during Nehemiah's day. So if you want to look that up, Nehemiah 13, 23 and 24. We don't need fathers to do what Ashdod did as well. Any other last comments? So we've talked about good examples of fathers and things that can be good last week, and then today some fathers from the Old Testament that we do not want to imitate.
So
Anybody?
what about the fathers that do everything right, walk with God, and are righteous, and their kids still go bad?
Well, that's a good.
Gonna happen.
That's a good point. So, as a father and a mother, what's our responsibility? To raise our children in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And when they get grown, leave the home, make their own decisions, we can still influence them, can't we? We can still talk to them, we can still try, but we don't have them under our control. When they're little guys, when I say sit and you don't sit, I can sit you. When they get older and they're involved in things, I can't necessarily go pull them out. I mean, they're adults at that point. We should always love our children and keep doing the things we can and should, but our job is to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and then continue to work and pray for them that they might come back. We see that happen a lot. Young folks leave, they go do their own thing, but if they were raised right, they've got to have that in the back of their mind, and we need to keep it in the front of their mind by reminding them, that's not right. That wasn't right when you were 5. It's not right now that you're 25, 35, 45, 55. It's still not right.
It's a little bit like the Great Commission, or, we're to preach to the world. We're not to keep pounding the world about it. We tell them the gospel, and it's up to them to obey it.
But that's a good point. We're responsible for our children totally while they're with us in our household. And if we let them run wild at that point, then chances are they're going to continue to do that when they get older. But a lot of children do depart from God, but it's always our hope and prayer that they'll return. So we have a responsibility to be a mother and a dad for how long? Till death, right? Same thing as serving God. We talked about that with retirement. We don't retire till we die. In serving God, we don't retire and stop being a mother or father until we die. So, you know, where there's breath and our Lord has not returned yet, there's always hope, if that's the case. So those of us that are fathers, or those that may be fathers at some point, Ethan just rolled in. He might be that's a scary thought, that he might be a father one of these days.